Yeah, thank you very much and good afternoon to all of you. Today I am going to make my presentation on the Hariti, the mother of demons in Buddhist art and tradition. And coming to the main topic, which I am going to talk today. So we know that among all the religious belief, perhaps the first notion to appear was basically the myth of the motherhood. And both human as well as on the cosmic level, the primitive man, he came to perceive in the motherhood a power to be venerated and feared in its own right. So thus he arrived at the abstraction of the mother principle and its further personification into several goddess mother type. And Hariti is among one such deity who was essentially a demoness. And after being converted to the path, the righteous path by the Lord Buddha himself, she became one of the most revered mother goddess whose worship extended from Gandhar to India and to China and Japan in the Far East and in right through the ages from the 1st century BC to the present times. When we talk about the term Hariti, so this etymologically this word Hariti comes from Hari or its derivative Har meaning to steal or kidnap. Hence Hariti stands for the action of stealing others' children. In Vinay Kumar, Hariti is referred by the name of Hunashi, meaning by joy. The ancient text mentions Hariti as a Yakshini who was married to Panchika, a Yaksh general of the Gandhar region. In her previous birth, when Hunasi was pregnant, she was made to dance by few people. As a result, she miscarried and lost her unborn child. So, because of this raise, or because of this loss, she became so furious and she vowed that in her next birth she would nip off and cannibalize the children of the Rajgri. And by Panchika, she had 500 children together at that time, and she came to be known as Bhutmata, that is the mother of demons. So it is said that because of the wicked vow she took in her previous birth, she was born as a Yakshini and gave birth to 500 children. To feed her and her children, she took to cannibalism and stole a child every day from some house at Rajgri. And this led to the great fear and lamentations among the inhabitants of the place of Rajgri. And to protect their children, the aggrieved parents came to Lord Buddha and they plead them to save their wards or save their children. And from this time, she came to be known as Hariti. So this is the etymological meaning of this word Hariti. But we know that her original name was Abhirati. And from this time, she came to be called as Hariti. And she continued the vengeance upon the innocent children to Rajgiri. Thus, she gained the name Hariti from them from that time onwards. And because of after this action to teach a lesson to Hariti, Buddha came to the city of Rajgiri for begging his meal. And when he arrived at Hariti's dwelling house, he stole the child of Hariti, youngest child, who was very much dear to Hariti. His name was that we know his name was Pingala. And when she was unable to find her own child, Hariti, so she became very much this worried and she pleaded Lord Buddha to help her. Then Buddha obtained her the this lady in finding out his own children and Hariti, and on that pretext on in that this Lord Buddha asked her to become the worshipper of the sun, and after that Hariti became the member of the sun. And after this one, thereupon the Buddha sent her the monk, but the Hariti asked Lord Buddha, I have the 500 children, how I will feed my children? So upon hearing this, Lord Buddha sent his monks and asked them to supply abundant food every day to Hariti and her children. And the order of this Lord Buddha was just followed by the monks very faithfully. And in return for these services, the Yakshini Hariti and her children were to become the custodians of the Buddhist buildings. And this particular fact is being attested by the writings of the Wensang as well as the Yitzhing, who visited India in 7th century CE. And they refer to the ceremony of the consecrating the image of the Hariti either in the porch or in the dining room of the Buddhist monasteries in India and Nepal. So the story of Hariti occurs in detail in this Vinay Pichak of the Sarvastivadi school and the Mahavastu as well as the Samyukta Ratna Sutra of the Chinese Sutra Pichak. And religious text Sadhanmala describes Hariti as the Yaksheshwari as well as the Mahayakshini and at some places as the eliminator of all the sins. So after the changeover and the spiritual rebirth, Hariti became not only worthy of the adoration, but also attained the status of the symbol of the progeny and as a protective force for the children. With the spread of the Buddhism, Hariti, along with her consent Panchika, which is also known as the Kuber, became the popularly worshipped from Kashmir to the North India to the down south, and also in the countries of the Bangladesh, in the east to the areas of the Gulbarga in the extreme south of India. Also, she is being worshipped in the areas of Visakhapatnam, Nagarjunikonda, and many other places. Also in Nepal, Bali, Indonesia, China, and Japan. And to this day, even today, in many parts of the India, there is a common belief that the mother goddess takes the shape of the pox and seeks the appeasement for the disease to be cured. And in North India, especially in Rajasthan, there are said to be 7 such sister goddesses, namely Mata or the Sitala Mata, that is the Akand, uh, Kankada, Lalbai, and few more which are found in the North India, more particularly in the Rajasthan area. And when we talk about the Western Maharashtra, there the village mother goddess is called the Satvai and are worshipped and offered the prayers to protect the progenies as well as the newborn child. So this is the concept of the Hariti, which is being even followed today. So when we talk about the emergence of the cult of the Hariti, this Hariti cult seems to be have been well established by the Indo-Greeks as well as the Kushan times, as it is indicated by the archaeology and the sculptures of this period, and Hariti gained popularity as the time passed. And Hariti with her clan was also part of the progressively significant devotional cult and underlying the ultimate goal of the Mahayana Buddhism that seeks salvation through the grace of good karma and through guiding other compassionately to attain the nirvana. Hariti shrines through as a fine examples of the deity less than a bodhisattva, but more than a mortal staver of the arhat. So she embodies the perspective of the karmic link between asceticism as well as the spiritual fulfillment. And Hariti's conversion to the Buddhism or to the Buddhist faith, it introduced a new phase in the life of goddess Hariti, and she became the Upasika of Lord Buddha. And from a devourer of the children, she became the protector as well as the deity. And for this reason, the image of Hariti was found either in the porch or in the corner of the dining hall of the Buddhist monasteries, which is being attested by the Itzing as well as the Wensang also. She was depicted as having a baby in her arm and around her neck 3 to 5 children. And very soon a popular cult grew around Hariti. Wensang records that there was a stupa in honor of Hariti, which is said to have been built by King Ashok in the Peshawar region, and in the people there at Peshawar, they offer the sacrifices to her to obtain the offspring from her. So it appears that she was the most powerful among the followers and of the 4 heavenly kings of the Devrajas. And the name Hariti acquired sanctity very early. The inscription of a statite reliquary found inside an old stupa of the 2nd century BCE mentions the this relic of the Hariputra, a Buddhist teacher and contemporary of Ashoka. The Hariti cult seems to have been well established by the Indo-Greeks, which I have already told you, and the Suvarna Parasottama Shutta of the 5th century describes her as the Mahadevi, and she is invoked thereupon with more important deities like Saraswati, the Sri, Dhrida, and that is the other earth goddesses, and many more. And the 15th chapter of this Suvarna Prabhosottama Sut is called a Rakshas, or the protection extended to the listeners of the sutra by the yakshas and the other Buddhist deities, including Hariti and the other like the Chandalika, Chandika, Dandikuta, and all these have been mentioned all together. So all these deities will convert into the entire Jambudvip into a land of the plenty in all respects. That is mentioned in this particular text of 5th century BC. So Hariti with her clan was also part of the progressively significant devotional cult, underlying the ultimate goal of Mahayana Buddhism that seeks salvation through the grace of the good karma as well as through the guiding other compassionately to attain nirvana. The Hariti shrines are the final example of the deity, which are not less than, more less than this bodhisattva into the Buddhist pantheon. In art also, when we talk about the art, this Hariti is shown side by side with the Shiva, Maheshwar, Skand, and some of the highest Buddhist deities from the Gupta times onwards. She came to be regarded also as a tantric deity and with the power of the healing diseases. And she was identified with the Sitla personification of the smallpox afterwards. So when we talk about this particular iconography of Hariti as well as the representation of this particular goddess in Buddhist art and tradition. So we can see that the iconography for the Hariti seems to have been developed in the Gandhar region, where such depictions are found, and some sculpted poses show her standing with at least one children in her arm. She also appears coupled with the Panchika, one of the chief minister of the Kuber and the lord of the Yakshas, and who is seated side by side in somewhat relaxed manner within some of the sculpture panels. Panchika is portrayed in the armor carrying a lance, and he is one of the generals in the Kuber's Yaksh army. And Hariti in her maternal role with the children clustered about her skirt and one frequently swaying touching her breast. On occasion, she is seen holding a cornucopia also. And Hariti is depicted in many ways in the Gandhar art when we find the many examples. And in some sculptures, she is found sitting, while in some she is standing. But one of the most common feature of the sculptures is the presence of the children. And the basic attributes in the Gandhar figure of the Hariti are the cornucopia, wine cup, lotus flower, child, as well as the tree. And in Greek and the Hellenistic sculptures of the Chaike as well as the Ardokcho, the cornucopia is found, and therefore maybe Hariti got this feature from them, we can say that. And also the feature of carrying a child may be obtained from the goddess Madonna or the Taiki. That is, for example, when we see the example of this Yusuf Jai figure, which you can see at the below, is similar to the Isis Lactanus, a prototype of the Madonna. And this particular sculpture shows a child seated between the feet of the Hariti, who is compared with the Plutus. And although the monumental depiction of Panchika as well as the Hariti appears in some of the examples at the cave 2 of Ajanta in the Western India towards the end of the 5th century, the persistence of this particular iconography of this particular goddess is absorbed as well as accepted from the Gandhar region, where the representation is devoted to the mother goddess arose during the Kushan period that shows the reformed demoness Hariti. And we have found so many examples of, particularly in art, in the Jain art also. And for the Jainas, they regard this Hariti as the Bahuputrika, that is the queen of the Manibhadra, and who in her malevolent aspect was known as Putana, and in her bountiful form as Ambika Devi. I will show you the figure. So this is that particular panel where is from the Jain art. You can see it here. And in terms of the iconography here, Ambika Devi has a close resemblance with the Hariti. And in Hariti images, we see a small child held in one arm while the other arm is projected holding a herb or a pomegranate, fruit, or cornucopia, or is frequently held in the Abhay Mudra. While in Ambika Devi has a small child in her lap, a slightly older one by her side, and seen holding a branch of the mango tree in her right hand. Ambika Devi, in a likeness with the Hariti, became a popular fertility symbol and was revered as believed by expectant mother. So this particular deity is also represented in the Jaina art also. In Western India, especially Ajanta, this particular deity represents a number of the beautiful Haritis. And the goddess here is seen in a variety of her aspect with a visibly distinct prominence. Hariti in her maternal robe with the child children clustered around her skirt are frequently shown touching her breast in most of the examples. You can see here, this is that particular specimen. And on occasion, she is holding a cornucopia, which I have already told you. And the Devi looks like a royal figure, consecrated in the prominence, blessed by the presence of her offspring. And ideally, Hariti is mostly depicted with the children, sometimes 5 in number, which is the symbolic of the 500 children. And in some of the iconographic representation, Devi can be seen without her children and in her ogre or the violent form, indicating the infiltration of the foreign influence or the merging of the different goddess cult into this particular depiction of this particular deity. When we talk about the depiction of this Hariti in the Mathura art, it was portrayed in a more indigenous way. And silent features of the Hariti in the Gandhar art, which I have told you, was the cornucopia, wine cup, lotus flower, wine creeper, money bag, child, as well as tree. While in the Mathura art, school of the art, it is seen that the certain features are eliminated, like the cornucopia and the features, because we are not finding these features in the art of the Mathura. And here the child is more prominent as well as the important in the Mathura art. And the three type of the Hariti images we can see in the Mathura school of art, that is the Hariti with the concert Kuber, Hariti with the Kuber, and also with other goddess and the Hariti with children only. So these all are the examples. And in one of the popular form, Hariti appears coupled with the Panchika. You can see here, this is the example of the Hariti with the Panchika from cave number 2 of Ajanta. And he is one of the chief minister of the Kuber, that is the lord of the Yaksha. And he is seated side by side in somewhat relaxed manner. Panchika is portrayed in her arm carrying a lance, and he is one of the generals in the Kuwait's Yaksh army. The Kritang Sambaga Panjika Chronicle of the Hariti is noble and enriching in many ways. Firstly, she is kept in company with her consort, which is referred to as the Raja, clearly meaning the king of the Yakshas. And the text here, that particular text, describes him to be more represented holding the nakul, that is the mongoose, sometimes, and the pomegranate, that is the beach patraka, as well as seated in a Satparyana posture, that is the one foot is placed on the thigh of the other, but feet is uncrossed. So Hariti images are usually accompanied by her spouse Panjika in most of the example, but she can also be seen with Yaksh and the Nidhi as well as the Jambala, or presenting the richness of the power as well as the fertility and reinforcing the consideration of the Yaksha cult into the Buddhist tradition or in the Buddhist faith. And here the Chitra Karmaka section of the Kriya Samgraha Panjika Sutra, it instructs this artist to make the image of this particular Hariti to the left of the door of the shrine, and the king Yaksha to the right part of this shrine. I'm talking about this particular image, and they should be shown facing each other. And here, there the great Yakshani Hariti should be seated in the Lalitasan pose in this particular image. You can see here, and where the one foot is folded horizontally while the other dangles down on a visual seat. And her complexion is reddish white, and she possesses beauty of form and the face. And she is adorned with all the types of the ornaments. And in one of her hands, she is having the image of this treasure of Priyankara, while the other hand is filled with the jewels. And she has a smile on her face and enjoying being in the company of her 500 sons. So this particular image is also found in the at the site of Ajanta. And in the panel, Hariti, flanked by the Panchika and Nidhi here, is shown as an impressive as well as a accomplished woman of the substance and maternal bliss, as well as the artist here has very successfully shown her in a very this fertile feminine figure, mass of her locks falling around her plastic rims, and her stomach shown by a pressed girdle, and her slim waist with the broad hips, as well as the heavy portray her as a classical Indian beauty. She is holding her baby and carries a fruit in her right hand, and she is depicted along with her family, babies surrounding and appear plump and graceful and adorned beautifully. And this Hariti sports a charming hairdo, as does the Panchika as one side. Here we can see in this particular image. A very engrossing depiction of this Hariti is from a window, this window jam from cave number 2 of again Ajanta. At the left side of this door jam, here the goddess is standing with her child, having a stout figure. She is standing in Katihast position, and she holds some upturned fruit, that is most probably the pomegranate, and in her slightly raised hand. She has elongated face, prominent features, and wearing a beautiful hairdresses. The image depicted inside this ancillary shrine of Cave 2 at Ajanta shows that Hariti is seated with her spouse in a sculptured panel larger than the size that is carved and plastered into the chapel. This one. And Hariti here is she is dwelled very heavily and sitting in Lalitasan or the cross-legged posture. And beside this, we also come across so many images of Hariti in the Buddhist art. So we know that from the legend of the Hariti, that the Hariti was a Yakshini and born later on she was born into the benevolent class of the demigoddesses because of her karmic actions or because of her karma. And this Hariti image occasionally provide the reference to this past and to her Yakshi status. And one comparatively natural example is the standing Hariti with the children from the site of this Taktebai, which is now in this Peshawar Museum. And this Hariti mimics the stance of the Gandhar Yakshi as she poses under a canopy of the leaves and garland on the top of a pedestal. On the top of the pedestal in the form of a Purna Kalas. You can see it here. And her garments, they emphasize a prevailing Indian influence. She wears a sari, a chaplet of the woven leaf, and the ankle bracelets over bare feet in the Indian fashion. And another example is the famous, this particular example, famous standing Hariti discovered by Aurel Stein at the site of Sare Bahlol, and it is installed at Peshawar Museum right now. And this monumental image is similarly dressed in the Indian manner with sari and barefooted with the anklets, but is remarkable for its several unique features. And the figure is adorned with the 4 arms and holds the usual attribute of a trident in addition to the requisite presence of a small child. And in addition, this is the detail of this particular image. And in addition, the prominent flanks protrude at each side of the faintly smile mouth, a reference to the Hariti, this benevolent Yakchi nature as well as the notorious aptitudes. A cluster of the leaves alongside her head represent the symbolic vestiges of the tree of the fertility, which is associated with the Indian Yakshis. And the Hariti from the Sikri, this is from the image from the Sikri, which is now housed in the Lahore Museum, is the illustrative of the converging influence of the Hellenism as well as the Parthian influence. And the figure here you can see the robust body is clothed in the chiton with one shoulder clasped undone and the right breast is exposed, and the wet drapery effect is emphasized over breast and the girdled hips. And the jeweled diadems with the medallions and the flat neck ornaments are comparable to those of the royal figure and the funerary leg from the site of the Palmyra. And the Yusufzai image from this one, which is now housed in the British Museum of the Gandhar collection, it reveals a more dominant effect of the Iranian culture in the symmetry of the figure, her hieratic seated posture, as well as her Parthian garments. Most notable are the long decorative sleeves of the Hariti's robe with the ornamental horizontal gathers and the raised vertical trim, also characteristics of the sculptures of the Hatran royalty. And the braided chaplets with the single rosette recalls the headwear of the double molded fertility figures as Hellenistic tradition adopted in Gandhar in advance to the Parthian incursions. And the bare feet as well as the daunt style ankle bracelets are elements in the Kushan representation appropriated from the Indian sources. And the four examples just given are discovered by the British archaeologists from the late 19th as well as the early 20th century. You can see here, this is another example here. You can see this is from the site of the Sakandari. And here you can see it was discovered in 1963-64. And here you can see the Hariti with the children that share some common features with these earlier findings, which were found by the earlier people. The round fleshy face as well as the neck folds of the deity, her hairstyle with its cluster of the snail curves over the forehead and the longer strands pulled back to curl over the ears as well as the distinctive round ornament suspended over the forehead replicate the features of the Hariti which has been found from the Sikri which we have seen earlier. In addition, each figure wears a jeweled pulsed hairstyle or the hairpin, which is flat circular necklace and the scarf wrapped over the shoulders as a shawl. There are also significant differences from these two specimens from the Sikri as well as from the site of this Kanderi. The Sikri Hariti holds a child in her right arm and two at her shoulders, but hold no other identifying attributes. She stands in a upward Tribhanga position, and her lower extremities below the hem of her chitons are missing. By contrast, the Hariti from the Saikandari is provided with the 7 children you can see here in the image. The cluster of the grapes in her raised right hand reinforces her identification as a goddess of abundance, and she sits rigidly upright in the Pralamba Padasana on a throne with a wide ornamental back. Her knees spread apart and bare feet placed firmly beside each other on a diminutive pedestal. And the most elaborate as well as the iconographic inclusive example of the image of Hariti as well as Panchika is has been recovered from the site of Taktebai. You can see in this particular image, and is now it is in the collection of the British Museum. And here the both these pair, that is Panchika as well as Hariti, they sits on a carved wooden throne with the back as well as the turned legs, and the female resting her right hand on the left thigh of her partner. She wears a chiton and polos as hold and holds an elongated cornucopia with a horned animal head finial. Her beardless partner wears the pleated tunic with the mantle, laced greaves as well as and fillet. And although his arms are missing, a footed two-handed drinking vessel in the shape of a calyx remains fixed in the palace at chest level. And between the heads of the couple, a bearded yaksh with a top knot extends a small money bag, while a small child clings to the thigh of the female, which we can see. And at either side, the upper torso of the flanked yaksha porous from a tripped vessel side, the contents flowing towards center in the smooth plant cylinder on which the deities rest their feet. So this is another view of that particular image. You can see it here. Now coming to the conclusion, the Hariti flourished as a child protector. She was an ogress turned goddess that we know. She was one of the most represented sculptures in the Buddhist art of Gandhar and later on in Mathura art also. And after reaching the primary as well as the secondary sources, this could be inferred that she was a Yakshi at first time and with her consort Panchika, and who was later turned into the goddess as mentioned in the Hariti Sutra, that is a Hinian text that we know. Now during the advent of the smallpox pandemic, she was established as a goddess and who protects children from smallpox in Mahayan period during the Kushanas or the late Kushanas. And this is the reason as to why Hariti sculptures are found in abundance from the Kushan period, and they are depicted in the Gandhara art. And Hariti is also sometimes referred to as Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance, because she carries a cornucopia. Similarly, there are many parallels of her in other parts of the world as mentioned earlier also, and many types of the images of the Hariti can be found with the child, without child, seated or standing. But from all these images, the features of the Gandhara art, that is the heavy dressing style as well as the heavy jewelry, is very much prominent among all the sculptures. And Hariti is represented in both standing as well as the sitting positions, and always with her children or without children. And in her significant characterization, Hariti is called a Yakshini of unparalleled beauty, justifying her name Abhirati, who was the original name of this particular Hariti goddess, and a smile on her face to bespeak of her benevolence. And the ancient text Sadhanmala also, to an extent, regards her as the demon goddess invested with the orphic mightiness of the fertility as well as the abundance, and she is also referred to as a beginner mother goddess of the substantive nature. And after her change over and a spiritual rebirth, Hariti become not only worthy of the adoration but also attained the status of symbol of the progeny and a protective force for the children. And with the spread of the Buddhism, Hariti, along with her consent Panchika, became popularly worshipped from Kashmir in the North India down to the south, and many parts of the world, also in the areas of Gandhar, Nepal, Bali, Indonesia, China, as well as Japan. And her personal loss made her atrocious, but after having the changes of the heart and put onto the righteous path by the Lord Buddha, she transformed as a goddess of eternal compassion, maternal love, and a divine being devoted to serve others. Thank you very much.